Hey y'all, welcome back. My name is Crystal. I've got another Fiberartsy book chat video for you today. I'm going to be doing a book tag. I have not done a tag in a while, and this one sounds like a lot of fun. It's the first time book tag. This is created by April over at Getting Hygge With It. I will of course link her video below, and if you're not checking out April, you really should. So let's get into it, get through these questions. All about your bookish firsts. So number one, Sorry Not Sorry, the first book that you could not stop gushing about. This is of course going back through your memory too, of trying to remember some of these book things, but I remember absolutely gushing about Fight Club. Now the year, I don't know the year. I was like, what, 19 or 20 years old when I read this book, and I was in college and, you know, young, right? But I read this, I flashback a little bit. I remember reading about the movie coming out, and I was kind of reading an article about it in a magazine or something, and I was like, oh, this sounds pretty interesting. Then of course I saw that it was a book, and I was like, maybe I should track that book down. And I read this book, and I remember gushing about this book to anyone who would listen to me. I got my sister to read it. I think I even sent it to friends and everything. I was like, you gotta read this book. It was just something like I had never read before in my like 19 or 20 years of life, but it really gave me pause, you know, some of the things that were presented in this story. You know, of course, it's Fight Club, right? Most people know what it's about, but we've got this guy who is going through the motions of life, and he meets Tyler Durden, and they create a fight club, right? An underground fight club where men can get out their aggression and everything. And there's a lot more going on in here, of course, but I just remember reading some lines in here and just being like, whoa, that blew me away. Whoa, that's so smart. And I just was like, what am I doing with my life? Yeah, I gushed about this book to anyone who would listen at that time. And I still love it. It's still a good one. Yeah, Fight Club. All right, number two, Thank You Next. The first book you wish you had DNF'd. And funnily enough, it's the same author, but Snuff by Chuck Palahniuk. I didn't like this book. I can't even really tell you why. I just didn't care about anything that was going on in this story. But I'm kind of a completist and a Chuck fan, so of course I read everything, although I'm like 3 or 4 books behind now. But this one is about a sort of, she's a porn star, and she's wanting to kind of go out in a blaze of glory by trying to like hit this world record of having sex with the most amount of men in like a certain period of time, kind of thing. I think her goal was like 600 or something like that. It's saying here. Yeah. And so we go through these chapters of like, you know, Mr. 137 talks about Mr. 137 and things like that. And like I said, I just didn't care. Like the sex stuff didn't bother me, but I just was like, who gives a crap? So I kind of wish I didn't finish that one. All right, number 3, Working Wonders. The first book that helped you through something hard in your life. I talked about this book recently over my top 10 favorite books of all time list, and that's Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer. It came to me at a point in my life when I was kind of struggling with like, what am I doing with my life? What do I want? What are my goals? You know, I was like 22, 23 or so. I traveled to Alaska, read this book, and it just was the book for me at the time. And I think it didn't really help me in a way, you know, kind of like guide me to what I was kind of looking for, I guess, at the time. And yeah, I won't talk too much about it because I talked about it recently, but yeah, it was what I needed at the time. So, number 4, Don't Turn Out the Lights. The first book that gave you chills. And it would be It by Stephen King. I read this book when I was a teenager. I have sadly lost my old paperback copy over the years. I had that really cool one with like the little claws coming out through the grate, you know, but so I did, of course, repurchase it, but I remember reading that. I don't even know, how old was I? 15, 16 or so. And yeah, it definitely gave me a fright, as I'm sure it does to a lot of young, if you read it at a young age. It's pretty scary, and it's got some definitely scary scenes in here. This is, of course, about a little town in Maine being sort of stalked by an entity, Pennywise the Clown, and he tracks down your biggest fears. And we've got this group of kids who are defeating it, and they come back as adults, right? We know the story. I remember it being pretty scary when I was a teenager. All right, number 5. Can I Get My Time Back, Please? The first book that made you angry. I don't know if this is the very first book that made me angry, but I do remember loathing Death in Venice by Thomas Mann. I wish I DNF'd it, first of all, so it could work for question number 2. But also, it just was like icky. It's, you know, about an old guy who like travels to Venice, and he's like lusting after this like young kind of preteen, teen, I don't remember how old he was. Not a grown-up boy, and I don't know. Like, I guess so. I understand it's like the point of the book, right? I didn't like it, so and it kind of made me angry because of that. All right, number 6. Out of the Comfort Zone. First book that made you fall in love with a genre you never really explored before. And this was my very first sort of true crime book. I read Helter Skelter, right? This all about the Charles Manson and the his cult and all the Manson murders and all that. And that hooked me into reading true crime. I read this, was I a teenager or my young 20s? I was still pretty young, maybe a little young to be reading about the Manson murders, but it was definitely my very first true crime book and hooked me into reading more true crime. I don't read as much as I would like to. There's definitely some that are on my radar that I need to get to, but man, I was enthralled reading this book, and it was so fascinating. So yeah. Number 7, Mirror Image. First book that made you feel known. And I'm going to go with The Shape of the Eye, which is a memoir written by George Estretch. Now, this came along at a time period in my life after my son was born. I've mentioned that my son has Down syndrome, and we were very surprised by that diagnosis. And so the first, those first, moments and, months or so were hard for us to come to terms with it. I thought that this is our life now, right? And I read this book, and I felt seen, right? And this is, George has a daughter with Down syndrome here on the cover, and he just talks about life with her and how things changed and how, things like that. All the appointments that you have to go through, and she has some pretty tough medical issues that we didn't have to deal with, but so that's all in here. And it was written so beautifully, and it wasn't overly sappy. With a lot of like sort of Down syndrome memoirs, it gets really sappy, it gets very religious, which I'm not a religious person. Like, a lot of times that stuff really turns me off. This was just very straightforward yet beautiful, talking about his child and their life. And this was what it, I was like, yes, this is kind of encapsulating how I feel. And it's a wonderful story. Even if you don't have any connection with Down syndrome, it's a beautiful book. So I do recommend it. And yeah, it was lovely. All right, final question here. Hop aboard the Wayback Machine. First book that you reviewed on BookTube. Now I'm new to BookTube here. I started March, April or so of this year. So you know, I haven't been around for a while, but the very first solo book chat that I posted on here was For Betty by Tiffany McDaniels, where I just kind of released words about this book. And y'all know I love it if you've been watching me for a while. And yeah, that was my first book chat on the channel. So that was it. 8 short questions. That's a fun tag. If you'd like to do it, consider yourself tagged. Again, I will link April's channel below with her answers to the tag. And let me know some of your bookish firsts in the comments. Thanks so much as always for taking the time to watch and comment. I really do appreciate it. And I'll catch you in the next one.